Greetings, you're on the Betrayal and Beyond channel. Okay, so, where does a story like this even begin? I guess it begins where it ended. In the kitchen, with the smell of coffee in the air. The good kind. The expensive, single-origin beans she loved. The ones I had to grind by hand because she swore an electric grinder would impart a metallic soul into the brew. It was late, maybe 10 o'clock at night. My day was over, a long stretch of client feedback and color corrections at the design firm where I worked. Her day, however, was just hitting its peak. From the living room, I could hear her voice. You might have heard it before. That warm, intimate, sun-drenched afternoon in Bali kind of voice. Chloe was live, celebrating 100,000 followers on her platform, The Wandering Soul. It wasn't just a travel blog. She called a movement, a philosophy, a testament to living a life untethered, a life of radical self-reliance. I should know. I designed the logo, a compass where the needle was a feather. I came up with a name, too. She told her followers, of course, that both had come to her in a flash of inspiration while meditating on a cliffside somewhere exotic. The truth was, it happened on our sofa while she was scrolling through Pinterest, and I was sketching on my tablet. It was our project, though. That's what I always told myself. Our dream. I never watched the streams. It felt too much like being the stagehand for a one-woman show. I was the guy behind the curtain who built the website from scratch, who taught himself SEO to make her posts rank, who edited her photos to make every dreary London afternoon look like golden hour in California. I handled the life admin, the bills, the mortgage on our beautiful, minimalist apartment, all the boring, terrestrial stuff. It was a partnership. I was the foundation that allowed her to fly. That night, she was doing a Q&A. Her voice, piped through the smart speaker on the kitchen counter, was conspiratorial, friendly. Maria from Austin asks, she read, Chloe, what's the real secret to your success? How do you stay so focused and fearless? I smiled to myself, pouring hot water over the coffee grounds in a slow, practice circle. I knew the answer she'd give. Something about vision boards or morning affirmations or the unwavering power of authentic living. It was a good narrative, but that's not what she said. There was a little pause, a thoughtful hum, and then she leaned closer to her microphone. You know, she said, her voice dropping into an intimate whisper, the real secret, the thing no one tells you about chasing a huge dream, is how important it is to have someone who keeps you grounded. I stopped pouring. I mean, you can't soar if you don't have a safe place to land, she continued, her voice so earnest, so sincere. You need that stability, that anchor, someone to handle the real-world stuff so you can stay in a creative headspace. It's not glamorous, their part, but honestly, I couldn't do any of this without my anchor. Anchor. The word just hung there in the air, suspended between the hiss of the kettle and the slow drip of the coffee. She didn't say my name. She didn't have to. 4 or 5 years, he keeps me grounded, had been her favorite way to introduce me. I always thought it was a compliment. I thought it meant I was her rock, her home. I never realized it meant I was her weight. The functional, necessary thing you attach to a ship to keep it from moving. The first thing you cut loose when you actually want to set sail. In that single moment, the entire narrative of my life, of our life, fractured. It was a tiny hairline crack, but I could feel a cold wind blowing through it. The foundation wasn't solid anymore. After the stream ended, after her bright, cheery sign-off, I sat in the darkness of our living room for what felt like hours, and I let the memories play. But this time, I watched them without the romantic filter I'd spent 5 years perfecting. The red flags were everywhere. They weren't flags. They were giant, flashing, neon billboards, and I had been willfully driving past them with the radio turned up. There was the job offer. Senior art director in Manchester. My dream job. The one I'd been working towards my entire career. I remember telling her, my voice buzzing with excitement. I remember how her face fell. Not with sadness, but with a flicker of something I could only now identify as panic. "But Liam," she'd said, taking my hands, her eyes wide and pleading. "What about this? The brand? I'm on the verge of something huge. Your stability right now, it's the bedrock of everything. Asterisk bedrock. Grounded. Anchor. Asterisk." I turned down the job. I told myself I was investing in our future. Her success would be our success. But it wasn't an investment in us. It was a buyout of me. I thought about my friends, how they'd slowly drifted away. It was never a big fight. It was Chloe's quiet, concerned observations. "Don't you think Mark is a little unambitious? Is that energy really good for you right now? Or Sarah just seems so cynical about my work. I just want to protect our positive space." She wasn't building a fortress for us. She was building a cage for me, isolating her most valuable asset from any outside influence that might give it ideas of its own. My work, my skills, they were just resources to be mined. The logo, the website, the brand strategy, one helped her outline. All of it was absorbed into the myth of the self-made, wandering soul. Anytime I'd gently hint at wanting a small credit, she'd give me a patient smile. "But baby, it's a much more powerful story if I did it all myself. It's better for the brand. And it's our brand, remember?" The lie was so much bigger than I thought. It wasn't just that she was taking credit for my work. It was that my entire life, my career, my finances, my social circle, had been carefully managed and constrained to serve as the launchpad for hers. I wasn't a partner. I was infrastructure. I waited until she was asleep, her breathing deep and even. The wandering soul, at rest in her safe harbor. I slipped out of bed and walked to her desk. Her laptop was there, glowing softly. I had never, not once in 5 years, looked through her private files. I believed in trust, but trust had evaporated hours ago in a cloud of coffee-scented steam. Her password was a variation of her brand slogan. Easy. I wasn't looking for love letters. An affair would have been simple, clean. This was something more complex, more corporate. My gut told me to look for a business plan, and in a cloud folder cryptically labeled Atlas, I found it. It was a 78-page PDF. The Wandering Soul, Brand Bible, and 5-year strategy. It was beautiful, professionally designed. I even recognized some of the graphic assets she'd bought with my credit card. I clicked it open, my heart a cold, heavy stone in my chest. I scrolled past the mission statements and target demographics until I found the section titled Resource Management. And there I was. Not by name, of course. I was a line item, the foundation asset. I had to read it 3 times before the words sank in. My entire being was distilled into a series of bullet points. Asterisk asset profile, asterisk Liam R. Stable income, low-risk personality, emotionally dependent. Skills, graphic design, web development, content editing. Core function, provides financial and emotional stability, allowing primary brand talent, CW, to focus on content creation and audience growth. Asterisk maintenance strategy, asterisk reinforces role as protector and provider through consistent verbal affirmation. Frame all personal sacrifices as contributions to a shared dream. Minimize public credit for creative contributions to maintain the self-made narrative essential to the brand's authenticity. Asterisk risk mitigation, asterisk discourage career changes that could impact financial stability. Isolate from social influences that might question the asset's primary function. I felt the air leave my body. This wasn't a relationship. It was a business arrangement where only one party knew the terms. My love, my support, my life, it had all been leveraged. I scrolled down, my hand shaking, a cold dread washing over me. And then I saw the final section, the 5-year plan, Phase 3. It was titled Sunsetting the Foundation. The plan was meticulous. It was scheduled for 18 months from now, right after she was projected to close her first round of seed funding. Once the brand was financially independent, The foundation asset would no longer be a necessity. It would be a liability, a narrative anchor, that word again, holding back the story of the completely untethered, fiercely independent woman. There were draft breakup speeches, scripts, each one with a masterclass in manipulation, painting her as the heartbroken hero who had simply outgrown a relationship. She was the bird who had to fly free. I was the safe, comfortable nest she had to bravely leave behind. She would get the sympathy, a dozen viral blog posts about the courage to choose yourself, and a whole new chapter of her brand. I was scheduled for decommissioning. I leaned back in the chair, the screen's cold light illuminating the silent room. There was no rage, no fire, just a profound, terrifying, and strangely liberating calm. The woman I loved didn't exist. She was a fiction, a brand she had created, and I was just a prologue to her story, a prologue that was about to be deleted. In that moment, staring at the blueprint for my own disposal, I realized the truth. The story wasn't about her at all. It was about me. And the question was no longer about how I could fix us. It was about how I was going to save myself. For a long time, I just sat there, motionless. The only sound in the apartment was the quiet, even breathing of the woman in the next room, a woman I didn't know at all. The person I thought I loved was a fiction, a carefully constructed brand, and I was just a footnote in her business plan, a resource scheduled for decommissioning. And in that cold, silent clarity, something inside me shifted. The part of me that was hurt, the part that was heartbroken, it just went quiet. It was replaced by a part of me I hadn't heard from in years, the designer, the problem solver. My entire life had been a design problem I hadn't even realized I was supposed to be solving. And Chloe had already presented her solution. It was elegant, ruthless, and effective. Now it was my turn. My objective wasn't to win her game. It was to design a new one with a single, non-negotiable outcome, my own freedom. I didn't delete the file. I didn't smash the laptop. I simply closed it, slid it back to the exact position it was in before, and walked back to our bedroom. I slipped into bed, my movements so silent, so controlled. She didn't even stir. I lay there on my back, staring into the darkness, and for the first time, I felt no emotion towards the person sleeping beside me. No love, no hate, just a project manager's calm assessment of a complex situation. The next morning, and for all the mornings that followed, I played my part. I was the anchor. I made the coffee, by hand, of course. I listened to her talk about engagement metrics and potential brand collaborations. I nodded and smiled and said all the right things. That's amazing, honey. You've worked so hard for this. Of course, I don't mind handling the groceries. You need to focus. I performed the role of Liam R., the foundation asset, with flawless precision. But inside, I was someone else entirely. I was an architect drawing up the blueprints for my own escape. My first move was quiet. It was about information, not as a weapon against her, but as a tool for myself. I needed to reclaim my own history. During my lunch breaks, I started creating a private, encrypted folder on a new external hard drive. I gave it a simple name, Portfolio, and I began to fill it. I dug through years of archived emails and old hard drives. Every logo concept I'd ever sketched for her. The complete source code for the first 3 versions of her website. The original, unedited raw files of photos I'd taken, complete with metadata proving I was the photographer. The email chains where I, on her behalf, negotiated the terms of her first paid partnerships. This wasn't about proving anything to her or to the world. This was about proving it to myself. Each file I saved was a piece of my own professional value I was taking back. For years, she had convinced me that my contributions were just the background noise to her symphony. Now, I was isolating every single note I had played. I was rebuilding the story of my own competence, a story I had allowed her to erase. A week into this quiet excavation, I hit a wall. I had the what, but I didn't have the how. How do you detangle a life that has been so expertly woven into someone else's? I kept thinking about a name from her past, a name she only ever mentioned with a particular kind of dismissive scorn. Alara Vance. She was a photographer Chloe had worked with right at the beginning, when The Wandering Soul was just an idea. The official story was that Alara was unprofessional and creatively limiting. She just didn't get the vision, Chloe had said with a sigh. Some people are just meant to be employees, you know? They don't have that spark. On a whim, I looked her up. Alara Vance was now one of the most sought-after commercial photographers in the city. Her work was stunning, sharp, and soulful. She wasn't just an employee. She was an artist. I found her professional contact email and wrote the shortest, simplest message I could. My name is Liam. I'm Chloe's partner. I was hoping I could buy you a coffee and ask for some advice. I didn't expect a reply. She wrote back in an hour. How's tomorrow at 10? We met at a small, anonymous cafe far from our neighborhood. She was exactly like her photography, direct, intelligent, with no time for bullshit. She had sharp eyes that seemed to see right through me. I didn't even have to finish my first sentence before she held up a hand. Let me guess, she said, stirring her espresso. You do all the work, she gets all the credit. She makes you feel like your stability is a gift you owe her, but also a cage that's holding her back. She's isolated you from your friends, and your entire life has been reconfigured to serve as the launch pad for her career. And now, you're starting to suspect that there's an expiration date on your usefulness. I just stared at her. I couldn't speak. I just nodded. She took a sip of her coffee. Yeah, I was the beta test for that business model. I shot her first big travel series. A whole month in Southeast Asia. I edited, I color graded, I did everything. When it came time to publish, my name was nowhere. When I confronted her, she gave me this sad, pitying look and told me I just didn't get the collaborative, ego-free nature of the project. Then she wrote a blog post about the importance of cutting negative energy from your life. She gave a short, humorless laugh. Chloe doesn't build partnerships, Liam. She strip mines people for their talent and then moves on to the next untapped resource. So what do? I asked, and my voice sounded small, pathetic. She looked at me, and her expression softened for the first time. You have to understand this, she said, leaning forward. You cannot win the game she's playing. Fighting her for credit for the past is a waste of your life. It's a sunk cost. She's the main character of her story, and you'll only ever be a footnote. So you have to stop trying to edit her book, and you have to start writing your own. Writing my own. I repeated, the words feeling foreign. Yes. What did you do before her? What did you love? What project did you put on a shelf because she told you it was a distraction? And it hit me. A side project I'd started years ago before I met her. A series of minimalist, typographic prints based on the street maps of cities I loved. I'd even built a small online store, sold a few. But Chloe had called it a cute hobby, a distraction from the real work of building her brand. So I let die. That's it, Alara said, as if she could read my mind. That's your lifeboat. Don't fight her. Don't confront her. Don't do anything that puts you on her radar as a threat. Let her think you're still the same reliable anchor. But every spare second you have, you pour your energy, your talent, your soul into building your lifeboat. You make it so strong and so beautiful that when the time comes to leave her ship, you won't be escaping. You'll be launching. I walked out of that cafe feeling like I could breathe for the first time in 5 years. Alara's advice was a key, unlocking a door I didn't even know was there. The goal wasn't to expose Chloe. It wasn't to get revenge. The goal was to make her irrelevant to my own happiness. That night, after Chloe was asleep, I didn't go to her laptop. I went to mine. I resurrected my old online store. The design was dated. The code was clunky, but it was there. It was mine. I spent the next 2 hours redesigning the logo. And as I worked, as I lost myself in the familiar comfort of fonts and grids and hex codes, I felt a spark, a feeling I had almost forgotten. It was quiet. It was small, but it was unmistakably, wonderfully my own. It was the beginning, and so began my double life. On the surface, nothing changed. I was still the perfect partner, the foundation asset. I'd wake up, go to my 9 to 5, come home, and perform the duties of my role. I'd listen to Chloe talk about her engagement numbers, her content pillars, her ongoing negotiations with a sustainable swimwear brand. I'd nod, offer advice on her new video thumbnail, and make dinner. I was a ghost in my own home, a method actor playing a part one had perfected over 5 years. And she didn't notice a thing. Why would she? The infrastructure was still running smoothly. The anchor was still holding fast. But after she went to sleep, my real life would begin. I'd slip out of bed and go to my laptop, not with the dread of working on her brand, but with a quiet, electric hum of purpose. I named my resurrected project Cartograph, the city maps. It was simple, clean, and entirely mine. The first few weeks were a blur of focused, joyful work. I rebuilt the online store from scratch, using a platform she'd never heard of. I spent hours refining my designs, not just for London, but for Paris, New York, Tokyo, places I'd always dreamed of visiting, not as a backdrop for someone else's photo shoot, but for myself. I researched paper suppliers, ordering sample packs, so I could feel the weight and texture in my own hands. I found a local, family-owned printing press that cared about ink and detail as much as I did. Every choice was mine. Every line of code, every shade of gray, every font pairing. It was an act of reconstruction. With every design I finished, with every product description I wrote, I was rebuilding the part of myself I had allowed to be strip-mined. I was reclaiming my own creative soul, one pixel at a time. And I discovered something I'd forgotten. I was good at this. I was really, really good. The next step was the hardest, the most tangible. Alara's words echoed in my head. You have to build your lifeboat. A lifeboat needs to be self-sufficient. I opened a new bank account, a simple, online-only account under my name. Then I logged into my company's payroll portal and rerouted a small percentage of my salary into it. Just 10%. It wasn't enough for her to notice on the joint account statements. She never looked at anyway. But it was enough to start a fund. My escape fund. Clicking that confirmation button was more terrifying and more liberating than turning down that job in Manchester. It was the first quiet snip of the chain. For a month, I worked in the dark. I built the brand, the product, the infrastructure. I didn't tell anyone. This was mine. It needed to be strong enough to float before I showed it to the world. Finally, I was ready. I launched the website and posted my first designs on a brand new, anonymous Instagram account. I followed a few design blogs, a few typography accounts, and left it. I expected nothing. I told myself it didn't matter if anyone bought one. The act of creating, it was the victory. I was at my desk at the firm a few days later, adjusting the kerning on an ad for a mid-range sedan, when my phone buzzed in my pocket. A quiet notification. An email with the subject line, "You've made a sale." My heart stopped. I clicked it open. Someone in Ohio had bought a 24 by 36 print of the map of Rome. The total was £85. After fees and shipping, my profit would be around £50. It was nothing. It was everything. It wasn't Chloe's success. It wasn't our success. It was £50 that I had earned with my own idea and my own skill. It was proof, tangible, undeniable proof that my value wasn't dependent on her. I had to lock myself in a bathroom stall for 5 minutes just to breathe. It was the most profound sense of relief I had ever known. That first sale was a crack in the dam. The next week, there were 2 more, then 5. I was packing prints on my lunch break, using the post office near my office. At night, I was designing new maps, responding to customer emails, learning about shipping logistics to Canada and Australia. Cartograph was a tiny, fledgling thing, but it was real, and it was growing. My secret world was becoming more vibrant and more real than my actual life. Meanwhile, in Chloe's world, things were escalating. She landed the swimwear campaign. It was her biggest deal yet, a 5-figure contract that came with a week-long trip to the Maldives. It was the validation she'd been chasing for years. But the deal came with a condition: a complete overhaul of her website and all her social branding to match the campaign's aesthetic. "It's a huge job, Liam," she said one night, her eyes shining with manic energy. She'd spread mood boards all over our living room floor. "The agency wants it done in 2 weeks. It's impossible, but if we can pull it off." She looked at me, her expression a perfect blend of hope and expectation. There was that word again. For years, hearing it would have filled me with pride. Now, it just sounded like an invoice. "They love my vision," she went on, "but they said the technical execution of my current site is a bit amateurish." She said it without a trace of irony. "I'm going to need you to basically live and breathe this for the next 2 weeks. We'll have to pull some all-nighters. It'll be just like old times, building our dream together." Old Liam would have canceled his plans, called in sick to his own job, and worked until his eyes burned, fueled by coffee and the intoxicating glow of her approval. Old Liam would have seen it as his duty, his purpose. But I wasn't old Liam anymore. I was the guy with an escape fund. I was the guy who had just shipped a map of Kyoto to a woman in Copenhagen. I looked at the chaos of her mood boards, at the desperation in her eyes, and I felt nothing. No anger, no resentment, just a calm, quiet distance. The problem on her floor was no longer my problem to solve. "I can't," I said. The words were so quiet, so simple. They just hung in the air between us. Chloe blinked. She actually looked confused, like a programmer who had just entered a familiar command and gotten an unexpected error message. "What do you mean you can't?" "Liam, this is it. This is the tipping point for the brand. For us. I have a major project at work." I lied, my voice steady. "It's all hands on deck. I can't take on anything else right now. You'll have to hire someone." The confusion on her face curdled into disbelief, then into a flash of pure, hot anger. "Hire someone? Liam, we don't have time to hire someone. And we certainly don't have the budget to pay an agency what they'd charge for a rush job like this. The whole point of you is that we don't have to do that. The whole point of you." She'd said it. She'd finally just said the quiet part out loud. I wasn't a partner. I was a cost-saving measure. I looked at her, the brilliant, ambitious, ruthless CEO of her own life, and I felt a strange, detached sense of pity. She was so focused on building her empire that she had never once checked the foundation. And the foundation was quietly, methodically packing its bags. "I'm sorry," I said, and the strange thing was, I almost meant it. "My hands are tied." I stood up, walked past her and the wreckage of her big plans, and went to my laptop. I had a map of Lisbon to finish, and for the first time, I didn't bother to wait until she was asleep. The 2 weeks that followed were like living in a split-screen movie. On one side, you had Chloe, a whirlwind of frantic, stressed-out energy. She was forced to do what she had been avoiding for years: pay for the kind of professional help she had been getting from me for free. She found a freelance web developer, a young, eager kid who'd charge a fortune for a rush job, and asked a million questions she didn't know how to answer. She'd be on the phone at all hours, trying to explain the difference between a hosting provider and a domain registrar, her voice tight with frustration. "No, I don't know the FTP login." Liam always handled that, she'd snap, shooting me a venomous look across the room. I'd just give her a sympathetic shrug. "Sorry, work's been brutal," I'd say, before turning back to my own screen. On my side of the screen, Cartograph was quietly taking flight. A well-known design blog, discover my Instagram account, and feature my work. The headline was Cartograph, finding the soul of the city in clean lines. The post went viral in the small, insular world of graphic design. My phone didn't stop buzzing for 3 days. Orders poured in. I had to upgrade my e-commerce plan twice. I was spending my lunch breaks not just packing prints, but fielding emails from boutique owners and gallery curators who wanted to stock my work. My little lifeboat was starting to look less like a lifeboat and more like a goddamn yacht. My escape fund grew exponentially. For the first time, I could see a clear, tangible path to a life that didn't require my 9 to 5, let alone my role as her support system. The thought was so bright, so intoxicating, it was almost terrifying. Chloe, buried under the stress of her own project, noticed none of this. To her, I was just being distant and unhelpful, a faulty piece of equipment. The dynamic between us shifted. The manufactured sweetness was gone, replaced by a cold, transactional courtesy. We were roommates, co-pilots of a silent apartment. It was a relief. The less she saw me, the more I became myself. The day of her departure for the Maldives arrived. Her new website was live, just barely. It was functional, but clunky. The developer hadn't understood her vision. She complained. It lacked soul. I just nodded. I knew it lacked my soul. I helped her carry her bags to the door. She was back in performance mode, the glowing, adventurous, wandering soul, camera ready. I'll be gone for 10 days, she said, pausing at the door. Try not to burn the place down. There was a little smile, but her eyes were cold. Don't worry, I said. I'll be fine. She hesitated, as if she wanted to say something else, something from the old script. Something about missing me, about being our dream. But the words didn't come. We had gone too far off script. Instead, she just turned and walked away. The moment the door clicked shut, a profound silence filled the apartment. It was the first time I'd been truly alone in that space in 5 years. And in that silence, I knew it was time, not in 18 months. Now, I didn't waste a second. I had been planning this for weeks, running the logistics through my head like a design schematic. I had already rented a small van. I had already signed a lease on a small studio apartment on the other side of the city, a place she would never think to look for me. The deposit had come from my Cartograph account. Packing was a strange, surgical process. I wasn't leaving a life. I was extracting myself from a set. Her things, the curated art books, the gifted press samples, the souvenirs from trips I'd only seen in her photos, were just props. I moved around them, carefully taking only what was mine. My clothes, my books, my old drawing tablet, my personal computer, the one that held the entire world of Cartograph. It was shocking how little of me was actually in that apartment. It took less than 3 hours to erase myself completely. The last thing I did was walk into her office. I took a single sheet of my expensive, textured printing paper, the kind I use for my maps, and with a black fountain pen, I wrote a single sentence. I folded it once and left it on her keyboard, right next to the sleek, new laptop she'd bought with her first advance. I didn't leave a key. I just walked out the door, closed it gently behind me, and didn't look back. 10 days later, I was sitting on the floor of my new, mostly empty apartment, surrounded by cardboard boxes and shipping tubes. The afternoon sun was streaming through the large window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. My phone buzzed. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was from Alara. Just saw her latest Instagram story. Looked frantic. Are you okay? My heart hammered. I opened the app. Chloe was back, and she was posting. It was a series of tearful, selfie-style videos shot in our old apartment. Her face was blotchy, her voice cracking. I don't know how to say this, she sobbed into the camera. I came home, and he's gone. Liam's gone. He just left. No explanation. No note. He just disappeared. She panned the camera around the pristine, minimalist living room. Everything is gone. 5 years of my life, our life, and he just erased it. He just abandoned me when things were finally happening for us. I feel so broken, so used. The comments were flooding in. A tidal wave of sympathy. We love you, Chloe. Stay strong. Men are trash. He was just holding you back, Queen. She was playing her final card, the one from the brand Bible. She was casting herself as the victim, me as the cold, heartless villain who couldn't handle her success. It was a brilliant move. It was the story she had always planned to tell. I felt a flash of the old anger, the old hurt, the injustice of it all. But then I looked around my new apartment. I looked at the stacks of orders for cartograph waiting to be shipped. I looked at the sunlight hitting the floor, and I took a deep breath. Alara's voice was in my head again. Astra, stop trying to edit her book. Start writing your own. Asterisk. She could have her story. She could have the sympathy. She could have the apartment and the followers and the brand. It didn't matter, because I was free. Her narrative no longer had any power over me, because I was no longer a character in it. Her crash, her success, her anything, it was just noise from a distant radio station I was no longer tuned into. My liberation wasn't a dramatic courtroom scene or a fiery confrontation. It was the quiet, steady work of building a new life so true and so solid that the old one simply became irrelevant. It was the silent click of a door closing. It was an empty apartment. It was the profound, terrifying, exhilarating peace of a blank page. My phone buzzed again. An email. The subject line, Stockist Inquiry, the Tate Modern Shop. I smiled, and for the first time in a very long time, it reached my eyes. I had work to do. Thank you for choosing to spend your time with us here on Betrayal and Beyond. Now, we'd love to invite you into the conversation. This story was about a quiet, methodical journey to reclaim one's own identity. Has there ever been a time in your life when you realized the only way to save yourself was not to fight, but to silently build a new life in the background? We'd be honored to read your story in the comments. If this episode resonated with you, please consider showing your support with a like and subscribe. And remember, the most powerful act of freedom isn't a loud declaration. It's the quiet, steady work of building a life that is completely, unapologetically your own.